It's quite amazing to be here at the Maricopa County Home Show. As if I've never experienced such harsh treatment, I detest this word. My lottery dream home, host David Bromstad, is renowned for his vivid energy, distinctive style, and daring designs. But what if we told you that beneath the happiness and amazing style is a tale of suffering, treachery, and struggles that almost broke him? Why did hundreds of classmates witness David's public humiliation? What sad incidents almost resulted in his permanent removal from television? Additionally, what recent? Did fans dread the worst after a health scare? We'll share the little-known backstory behind David's glitzy exterior in this video. From the childhood trauma he endured, to the private conflicts and legal actions that dogged his ascent to stardom. This is not merely a designer's story. It's about survival, resiliency, and redemption. Before he became the vibrant, color-loving TV personality that America loves, he was broken by bullying. Growing up in Cokato, Minnesota, a small traditional town, David Bromstad was a quiet boy. Being raised in a traditional Scandinavian American household, David was accustomed to strict expectations, unwritten norms, and a lack of tolerance for anything that deviated from the norm. David made an impression from a young age. Drawing was his passion. He was creative, expressive, and sensitive, characteristics that were not praised in his upbringing. They turned him into a target instead. The bullying had progressed to something far more harmful by high school. David remembered being humiliated by more than 600 of his classmates in one well-planned incident, which he described as one of the most terrible experiences of his life. He was ridiculed, laughed at, and isolated by the entire student body as they stood up and made lewd gestures at him in the school cafeteria during the day. Even worse, the principal of the school, who was supposed to be protecting the pupils, joined in. His involvement stung terribly. Whether he was carried away by the throng or was not conscious of the more profound hurt his actions caused. It was more than simply bullying for David. The betrayal was made public. David used the term daylight hell to characterize that experience in an interview with Out magazine in 2008. A cruel and alienating incident that turned his life around when he was younger. The worst thing about him was that after that day, nothing felt secure. There was no movement in the corridors. They served as battlegrounds. But the cafeteria had changed from a lunchroom to a battlefield, and instead of serving as guardians, the adults were reduced to players at worst and bystanders at best. No educators stepped in. No counselor showed up. David went off to face the ordeal by himself. David started to gradually distance himself in the months that followed. He became more reserved and self-reflective. David merely tried to get by on a daily basis, whereas most teenagers looked for camaraderie and identity. He concealed a developing tempest of worry and sadness, while bearing the heavy weight of shame on the inside. Much later, he realized that a lot of the hardship he had experienced during his 20s had been caused by emotional suffering that he had not yet learned to cope with. Unbeknownst to him, however, a glimpse of something extraordinary emerged from the tumult. David looked to art as a lifeline rather than just a diversion. Without passing judgment, he drew, painted, and created universes that were completely detailed in color and possibilities. Color evolved into an emotional survival strategy. Each vivid hue applied to the painting became a counter-argument to the weight of his spirit. Art was not expression back then. It was a flight of fancy. How these early survival skills ultimately developed into the cornerstone of his profession is what became very potent. Viewers now identified David's HGTV designs with bold, colorful palettes. Color was his only solace throughout those agonizing private times when those were conceived. His design mindset was not only upbeat, it was almost rebellious, a kind of quiet uprising against the gloom of his history. However, public discourse about these early traumas emerged considerably later. Fans simply saw the happy designer, who brightened every space he entered for years. However, the person behind that smile had battled for his identity, long before the cameras had the chance to turn on him. David's story strikes a chord because his happiness was not innate. It was a success. He battled for the light he now values so highly. For him, cruelty did not become a defining characteristic. Instead, it changed him. And that change was only the first step. And life took a nasty turn right after he landed his ideal job. The Disney fantasy that ended in disaster. David Bromstad set his sights on something beautiful after overcoming the harsh seclusion of his adolescence. He had fostered this dream since he was a young boy, employed by Disney. Becoming a Disney animator was more than simply a career aspiration for a young man who had always found solace in storytelling and painting. It was a blessing. In Sarasota, Florida, he enrolled at the Ringling College of Art and Design, well known for getting pupils ready to work for Disney, where he flourished. David thrived in an environment that at last honored creativity rather than mocked it. David got the job that had seemed like a dream after graduating. He became a part of a world that millions of others will only ever appreciate from a distance. When he joined Disney's prestigious animation department, he gave his all to the work while surrounded by talented creatives. It was confirming. It was thrilling. And David felt for the first time that he was at the right place. Behind him were the gloomy shadows of high school. His fantasy was coming true. However, dreams can be brittle, particularly in artistic fields. The animation industry saw a significant change in the early 2000s. Disney's gold standard, traditional hand-drawn animation, was being supplanted by computer-generated imagery, or CGI. The studio was completely restructured. David's department was not exempt from the widespread layoffs and budget cuts. He lost his ideal job almost immediately. He no longer had the role he had fought for, sacrificed for, and held on to so tightly. This was more than just a setback for my career. It was a really intimate one. The job had meant all David had worked so hard to earn: acknowledgement, acceptance, and a feeling of inclusion. Everything had been stripped away now. We're back to square one with only questions, no map, and no pay. Now what? Is that it? Was he too good too soon? David drifted aimlessly for a while. His self-esteem took yet another hit. He was going through an emotionally taxing period, and it felt like his foundation collapsed right when he believed he had a firm footing. Since there was no animation work, the bills began to mount. Once more, David needed to locate a different source of income. His lifelong passion for color and patterns inspired him to pursue a career in interior design. It was not a glamorous job. He began by taking on little tasks, mostly creating rooms for kids, frequently failing at them. Behind him, there was no brand. There were no customers competing for his services. But he persisted. He worked at several occupations before landing his next one, such as painting a mural or remodeling a room. Something much more potent started to develop, but the glamorous label with Disney was fading: tenacity. From this extremely humble beginning, David gradually developed a bold, expressive, and uniquely his style. This creative vocabulary, which he had employed while he was a victim of bullying, was now being ingested in actual homes. For him, color was much more than just ornamentation. It was aim, emotion, and therapy. The customers began to pay attention. News of mouth got the news out. A door suddenly opened, just when David thought he would be permanently trapped in a creative limbo. A friend convinced him to try out for the new HGTV reality show Design Star in 2006. In addition to designers, the show was looking for celebrities and individuals who could light up a space. After leaving Disney, David felt hurt and went into the audition with little expectation. But magic happened when he appeared on camera. From the start, his humor, kindness, and highly creative creations were evident. With a fresh start, a new audience, and a new platform at stake, he not only competed but won. David was unaware at the time that losing his Disney career had paved the way for something much more human and far more significant than a job. After years of wanting to bring characters to life, the animator was now offering actual people hope by establishing environments that allowed them to recover and flourish. He recovered with wealth and notoriety. However, a sour betrayal was simmering behind the scenes. His reputation was destroyed by the litigation. By 2015, millions of HGTV viewers have grown accustomed to seeing David Bromstad. He personified the idea behind My Lottery Dream Home and was well known for his charm, daring designs, and contagious smile. A man who made it possible for others to create their ideal lives. However, beneath the glitzy TV persona, a storm was subtly building, and all he had worked so hard to achieve was in danger of being destroyed when it finally cracked. Fans were shocked by the headlines. Jeffrey Glasso, David Bromstad's former business associate and partner, was suing him. Glasgow accused David of financial and romantic treachery in a civil complaint filed in Florida state court. The accusations weren't ambiguous or insignificant. They were hurtful, lurid, and intensely personal. Glasgow asserted that David had betrayed their trust by abusing their joint assets, and that their long-term connection had operated as a de facto marriage. The lawsuit claimed that those funds had been wasted on escorts and illegal drugs, including what Glasgow called wild hookup parties, and the employment of male escorts. His portrayal of excess and carelessness was a sharp contrast to David's immaculate public persona. Fans were in disbelief. Could it be that the kind, upbeat TV designer was concealing such mayhem behind the scenes? Was David Bromstad really this person? Such a lawsuit would usually result in a flurry of PR activity statements, interviews, and damage management for the majority of celebrities. David, however, took the opposite action. He achieved this by becoming quiet. No social media defense, no press conference. He let the legal process play out without engaging in a public verbal sparring match. In retrospect, this silence may have been his most calculated and respectable act. But to many observers, it was just as perplexing as the case itself. The case has been pushed through the legal system for a number of months. After hearing Glasgow's arguments and evaluating the evidence or lack thereof, the court rendered a definitive decision in April 2016. The case was completely dismissed. Glasgow's accusations against David were deemed to be unfounded and devoid of convincing evidence. In addition, the aforementioned court mandated that Glasgow cover David's legal costs because of what it described as misuse of the judicial system. David's lawyers shattered a protracted hush with their declaration. Ludicrous accusations made by someone in need. The plaintiff was sanctioned by the court for attempting to humiliate Mr. Bromstad after it determined that the allegations were untrue. Even yet, David would be plagued by the scandal's stain long after the case started. Supporters quarreled. The tabloids were furious. Chit-chat rooms were back and forth in conversation. Opinion had become firmly skewed by the time David prevailed in his legal battle. But David remained almost silent in the months that followed. His sole Instagram comment was a succinct yet insightful statement that read, "I've discovered that sometimes the most effective thing you can do is to be silent." He only ever mentioned the entire legal mess in public at that point. For David, the way forward was more about living honorably and gracefully than it was about protecting himself. On the side, he severs any connections with Glasgow. There was a time when the relationship was both romantic and professional. Even if the case was unfounded, it was obviously painful. Not because of the charges made by someone he really trusted. The more agonizing betrayal was that this was even worse than the public eye. However, David decided to pick himself up and continue, as he had done in previous instances. Despite his suffering, he grinned and carried on with his work. He demonstrated to both new and returning supporters why adversity does not define you. Your answer to it does. But the heartache was far from finished, even after escaping a legal ambush. It struck nearer to home this time. Emergency in the family. No lawsuit or courtroom could have prepared David Bromstad for the even more personal dilemma that he found himself in, just as the legal tempest was starting to wind down. Over the course of a little more than a year, he had to face two horrific events that would change his priorities, broaden his outlook, and serve as a reminder of how fleeting and uncertain life is. Early in 2015, the first blow was delivered. Greg Girard, a close friend of David's, had an unexpected and tragic hemorrhagic stroke. It was shocking, unexpected, and potentially fatal. Greg was vibrant and healthy at one point. Then he was unconscious and struggling to stay alive in a hospital bed. David made no hesitation. He hurried to his friend's aid and soon emerged as one of Greg's strongest supporters in the initial stages of his recuperation. By posting updates and heartfelt pleas on social media, he started a fundraising drive to assist with medical costs. In one post, he said, "Every day of physical therapy is a step closer." His words resonated with hundreds of people who followed the journey. The experience was pretty sobering. Although David was well known for assisting others in achieving their ideal homes, he was now seeing a significant other in his life lose even the capacity to carry out basic duties. There was a lot of contrast. He discussed the emotional toll, the helplessness of witnessing a human being suffer, and the joyous occasions of minor victories, like Greg opening his eyes or reacting to a nurse for the first time. He appeared to be adapting to a life governed by crises when tragedy struck once more. David's biological father had been rushed to the hospital in critical condition, according to a January 2016 Facebook status. With a hazardous rhythm and a resting heart rate of about 136 beats per minute, his heart was failing badly. The physicians feared that he would suffer a seizure, if not more serious. David was there once more. He called off appointments. He took time off from sets, and he wasn't a designer or a celebrity at the time. He was only a son. He hoped that all he could do was wait and pray, but he was afraid. He was direct in his post. His heart valves aren't working properly. His heart beats erratically. To avoid seizures and strokes, they are keeping a watchful eye on things. It was a moment of extreme vulnerability, giving admirers an insight into the man behind the joyful moments on screens and the flawlessly manicured Instagram pictures. The proximity of these two crises caused David to contemplate deeply. He started to consider the importance of being grounded, the pace of a profession, and the relative worth of public accomplishment. Helping lottery winners buy million-dollar houses was his way of coping with opulence and imagination. But keeping people alive became his reality. He became divided by that contrast. Success would never mean the same thing to him again. For him, success no longer depended on the number of shows he performed, or the number of fans he attracted. It all came down to being present for other people, for special occasions, and for life's unplanned twists. At that point, he most likely wouldn't have realized he was absent. In real life, David blocked out anything unimportant. Yet on TV, he still lit up and grinned beautifully. Instead of walking the red carpet on award nights, he got a health examination. He preferred to pray in silence before interviews. Even as he came back into view, he possessed a special kind of silent might that had not been there before. Fans believed he was suffering from a life-threatening sickness, the oxygen tube fear, just as he was starting to reconstruct his inner world. Even though he had a nasal oxygen tube in place, the insatiably happy presenter of My Lottery Dream Home was lounging in a chair. Just a picture of David, with clear plastic tubing up his nose, no background information or caption. A medical facility that most people think of when they think of hospitals, sickness, or worse. Social media was in flames in a matter of hours. His direct messages and comment sections were inundated with queries and anxieties from worried fans. "David, are you all right? What's happening? You have a canola up your nose. Why?" The picture touched a nerve. For someone who is well known for being vibrant, vivacious, and upbeat, this unexpected insight into what appeared to be a significant health problem was devastating. The public was accustomed to a polished, HGTV-friendly David, but this was not him. It was unvarnished and unpolished. There was a lot of conjecture. Was he sick? Was there a cover-up of some sort? Had he been fighting a long, covert war against a disease all along? The supporters have serious concerns. They also assumed the worst, because David had a history of managing crises in a calm manner, which is a widely held belief. Therefore, the truth was undoubtedly considerably different from what was thought when it was revealed the very following day. David explained that he hadn't been ill at all in the follow-up post. He clarified that the oxygen tube was utilized in hyperbaric oxygen therapy, a medical procedure that uses pure oxygen in a pressured room for health and wellness. It is claimed to reduce inflammation, aid in overall detoxification, and aid in the healing process following an accident. Nowadays, it might be regarded as trendy among famous people and professional athletes. He explained that it was a component of his self-care routine, healthy, prospering, and not ill. "This is just one more tool I use to maintain my energy and equilibrium. Don't worry, everyone." The fan feels immediate comfort, but the moment has a deeper meaning and provides a glimpse into David's growing wellness journey, which he has followed in private. There is more to that trip than just performance or flair. The reason was that David had always had a strong interest in both mental and physical wellness. Perhaps the image was in its reverberation. It revealed something far more profound than a tube. A man who has experienced emotional upheaval, legal disputes, public humiliation, and near-family crises, and who has come out on the other side with new discipline. Living to keep his own peace was, in a sense, more important than just entertaining other people. David began talking more about energy healing, sleep patterns, breath work, mindful eating, and well-being in the months after his oxygen tube post. Normally, he would not elaborate, but he decided to share brief glimpses of a life centered on self-awareness, intention, and healing. Physical rehabilitation was only one aspect of it. David subtly demonstrated that regaining trust was essential to his recovery, as was learning to trust his own body, those around him, and the fact that his weakness wouldn't be exploited. That trust had been acquired by a man who had once escaped organized bullying at school and a public legal battle full of vile charges. Many were taken aback by his apparent lack of fear in sharing less than ideal events. Once a character who exuded glitzy, TV-friendly happiness, David has started incorporating his own personality into the story. The part of him that became overwhelmed, that required oxygen to refuel, that sat quietly alone in the mornings, caring for plants and taking deep breaths. Rebirth, healing, and creative freedom, away from the spotlight's glare. Fans' current perception of David Bromstad, on social media and television, is not solely the product of his notoriety or appearance. The result of surviving is this: David quietly entered a new age marked by clarity, emotional depth, and total creative freedom, after years of negotiating personal hardship, public scrutiny, and emotional turmoil. This shift did not show up all night. Following legal actions, medical emergencies, and personal tragedies, David gradually withdrew from the public eye, not going away, but stepping aside just enough to take a breath, think, and refocus. Once a place of high-end production sets and press conferences, social media has evolved into a more relaxed and genuine environment. His posts changed from being promotional to becoming intimate, a stroll in his garden, a sloppy garment splattered with paint during an artistic endeavor. No script, no filter, just coffee on the porch in the morning. One pivotal moment physically took the shape of a mountain. David shared a picture of himself smiling and sweating after a strenuous trek atop Reinebringen in Norway in the beginning of 2023. The caption, understated but deeply honest, reflected a rebirth of the artist as well as the man. I've been through a lot over the past few years. I'll share when I'm ready, but for now it feels incredible to be clear-headed, fully present, and living the life I'm meant to live. He started thinking of every corner of his life as a chance to show off. Self-expression, not for show. Color, texture, and personal history abound in his ideal home in Winter Park, Florida, which he designed from the ground up. There was no consideration of generic choices. Each painting, motif, and artwork on the walls told a narrative. Award-winning design is not the goal. It is the healing design. It was more than simply a live-in den. It was a therapeutic retreat where David could meditate in the morning, cook dinner with his companion Nicholas Martin at dusk, and retreat there when the outside world became too loud. This is a physical manifestation of everything I've fought to protect my personal identity, my creativity, and my peace. David is claimed to have stated in interviews. In terms of fashion, he followed suit. David, who has always been known for his audacity, wore a wide range of items, including painted boots, glitter jackets, animal prints, and expressive fearlessness. To an outsider, this might appear like excessive flamboyance, but to David, it is armor. He also expanded his signature to his personal brand in recent years, launching a home decor collection with Grandin Road, beginning to produce art prints, reflecting his mostly personalized design philosophy, and doing other things outside of the media personality thing, where David moves to create entrepreneurship. It's art. It's rebellion. Every outfit is a statement. I survived. I'm still here, and I refuse to dim. I don't want to decorate houses, he once said in an HGTV interview. I want to help people feel something when they walk into a room. His collections are bold, frequently quirky, and irrevocably personal. They aren't meant for mass-market trends. I want design to serve as a reminder of one's identity or aspirations. Beyond business, he has placed a high value on community and mentoring. David, the first openly gay host on HGTV, has never been one to flaunt his sexual orientation, but he feels more than ever that it is his duty as a quiet trailblazer. He has made multiple appearances on Out magazine's prestigious Out 100 list, not so much for big political gestures as for just being himself, in a field that frequently prefers one to play roles. David Bromstad's story began with crayons and cartoons, and led to luxury real estate and national fame. But somewhere along the line, his legacy grew into something much larger than design. What started as a dream to animate Disney characters or decorate children's rooms turned into a far more personal mission to live and lead with authenticity, color, and courage. This was all while his career was beginning its most powerful chapter yet. David's legacy, after almost 20 years in the spotlight, isn't measured by the number of homes he's decorated or the number of people who watch My Lottery Dream Home every week. Rather, it's about the lives he's changed, the stereotypes he's broken, and the permission he's granted others to embrace who they are in a loud, beautiful, and unapologetic way. David's happy exterior isn't a facade. Underneath that, he rebuilt his own dream home from the ground up. Not just the one in Florida, but the one inside that he now lives in peace. It's easy to think of him as the guy who helps people buy dream homes with lottery winnings. The way he presents himself on television today, kind, playful, and vibrant, isn't just personality. It's resilience in action. Every happy laugh and every dramatic response to a colorful backsplash is rooted in years of choosing to show up for life, even when it didn't show up for him. It's a carefully crafted product of every heartbreak, betrayal, and lesson learned the hard way. For many LGBTQ+ people who grew up without representation, David became more than just a host. He became a symbol not because he made his identity the center of his brand, but because he never concealed it. Audiences trust David's heart. not just his talent, because of his emotional authenticity. He thrived by being the complete opposite, vibrant, flamboyant, and unmistakably himself in an industry that traditionally favored its stars to be polished, private, and palatable. His influence also goes well beyond television screens, through his public speaking, charitable endeavors, and open social media presence. David has become a sort of unintentional life coach, someone who exemplifies how to rise from the bottom with dignity. Since he has experienced the hardships firsthand, his remarks have weight, and fans not only respect but also trust him. He has freely discussed depression, therapy, reinvention, and the importance of self-care in the entertainment world. Additionally, fans were concerned that a recent Instagram story he shared in May 2025 that showed him wearing a nasal oxygen tube might be a sign of a health crisis. The speculation was quick and intense. Was he okay? Had something happened? David responded to the panic within a day, not with denial or public relations spin, but with honesty. "I'm super healthy and thriving," he wrote, clarifying that it was simply a side effect of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. It became a reminder, instead of a potentially frightening moment for the public. Not all healing is evident. Additionally, maintaining one's health occasionally requires taking unorthodox measures. He had nothing to conceal. He was just ahead of his time. For performance and recuperation, a lot of athletes and health professionals actually recommend this therapy. With one unexpected selfie, David just so happened to make it popular. Which aspect of David's trip most affected you? Tell us in the comments section. Remember to like, subscribe, and tell this tale to anybody who needs a reminder that light may emerge from darkness, and that beauty can emerge from suffering. When the next video appears on your screen, click on it. Thank you for viewing.